Shabbat Shalom to everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
So we're in Parashat Ba'alotcha, and it begins with the lighting of the menorah, and the parasha begins by God saying to Moshe, "Speak to Aaron and say to him, when you mount the lamps, let the 7 lamps give light at the front of the lampstand." And then the famous phrase comes after that is given a lot of attention, "Vaya'as ken Aharon," and Aaron did so. And the commentators, Rashi is the most known commentator on this phrase, which is he teaches that Aaron didn't change a thing, that he was precise, right? What else would you say about that? What Rashi meant by that?
But he did exactly the way he did it every single day, the same thing, the way he was told by Moshe. Every single day he didn't change anything. He went always exactly the same.
So the value there is then it's like spiritual life is about precision, right? It's about being, I don't know if we might
but
say.
Not deviating.
Right, to the left nor to the right. That it was like, should be exactly as so, and he didn't do anything that would make it seem any different.
The way I prayed yesterday, what I said yesterday, I say today, I will say tomorrow.
Zeu.
Zeu.
That's it. Do you find that inspiring?
Sometimes I do. Actually, I didn't find that inspiring, but once I was in the presence of a professor of mine at the seminary who was a Holocaust survivor. And he said, my life and our lives were so immensely disrupted that I find comfort in the fact that it's always the same, doesn't change. I find comfort by living in that misgeret, in that framework where nothing changes. It's predictable.
Right. Which in some sense we always joke that when people are like, why did you change the Lecha Dodi?
Yes.
Right, like you stole my Lecha Dodi.
One time somebody came up to me and says, you killed my Shabbat. I killed your Shabbat. You changed the melody of Shiru Lanunai.
Right. So there is a sense that there is a power, obviously, to kind of regularity, precision, and stuff. But the Hasidic masters.
But wait, about the regularity, I think that when you have the framework of regularity and the sameness, if you live in that strictness, there's also room, because you internalize it. There's also room to sort of improvise or to.
Right, there is something born from that.
Yes, exactly, yes.
You know, I think I always, it's like every morning get up and daven, and it's mostly not an ecstatic experience, right? But every once in a while, something emerges from the consistency, because if you don't have that, you can't ever find that insight, right? And the Hasidic masters, I think, were understood Rashi, but they found it unsatisfying, right? So they came up with different meanings around what Vaya'as ken Aharon was, and we'll just kind of looking.
No, because it's one of my favorite ones.
Which one is your favorite one?
My favorite one is that Vaya'as ken Aharon, he did it exactly the same, with the same intention that he did it the first time.
Yes.
In other words, that every single day he had to find or rediscover the newness of doing it for the first time. So it's a completely different mindset, right? It's to say every single day I have to do it as if it were the first time. And that's really hard.
Right, and actually, when Rashi says that, he says actually this is the praise of Aharon, right? That this is what makes him praiseworthy, is that he did it with such precision. And that's what the Kutzker and the Gaon of Vilna say about that, which is like his praiseworthiness was that he was able to find the Kavannah like it was the first time, which means that there's something new all the time to light the fire, right? So then there's the Reb Baruch of Mezrich told a story about seeing Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev, who was davening like with his whole body, like crazy with ecstatic, and he said to him, if Aaron did it that way, he would have spilled the oil and the menorah would have gone over like maybe there's something a little like, chill out, honey, But the answer given to that was actually that Aaron was able to, on the outside, have the discipline to do it with restraint, but on the inside, he had fire, right? That you don't actually have to express the ecstatic. I mean, sometimes we do, that actually being embodied in that way is a very powerful idea, that the fire on the inside actually penetrates outside. But in this case, Aaron was able to contain his fire on the inside in the form that he could actually light the menorah, which is also a very powerful idea. He was able to do it with precision, but it didn't diminish his hitlahavut, his fire on the inside, which is a beautiful idea. Like it's connected to the notion of lighting the fire anew each time, is that we want to feel that kind of, that passion, right?
Sometimes some of the Hasidic practices are that you have to move on the outside, because if nothing is lit on the inside, maybe the moving on the outside will cause the flame on the inside to actually to come out and to emerge. And sometimes, if you're in a static place and nothing's happening spiritually, and nothing is producing, and you get anxious because you really want something to happen, you want a connection, you want a fire. So sometimes you have to do something on the outside that will awaken
it. Yeah. Right, and sometimes it's also, we might sometimes look at it with skepticism that it's a little bit performative, that the outside could actually be empty on the inside. And so this is like a push to say you actually have to light it on the inside. And finally, the Sfat Emet says that it's connected to the idea that he brought it the first time, every time, but he says that that it meant that no 2 days were the same. And Aharon drew down a new light each day into the world, which is a slight difference. It's the idea is that obviously there was something new every time, or it was like the first time every time. But in this idea, actually, he says Moshe called him morning, meaning like the morning would arise, like that God lights a new day every day, and that part of spiritual life is trying to find a newness, because roteness teaches us that we have no imagination sometimes. So what do you make of the package of all the teachings?
No, I think all these things live together. It's not either or. Spiritual life has room for all these. A spiritual life has room, and more than room, has a need for all of these different venues or approaches. And you can't stay with just one. Sometimes this one is helpful, sometimes this one is helpful. Sometimes you are this Aaron, sometimes you are that Aaron. And you have to try different things. And spiritual life is dynamic, and it has to be moving around all these different things and bring them together. Yeah,
I think also that, I feel like for many years for a handful of years, we've been talking how hard the world is outside. And sometimes actually we just need to focus a little bit on what's happening in here, and to a little isolate ourselves, which spiritual life is meant to actually push us outside eventually, but there is something to cultivating what's alive with discipline and with passion and with pursuit and with the possibility of newness, because that's the engine by which we live. And if we don't have that engine, which gets renewed on Shabbat, we need it to live in this world. And so we should be blessed to have both what Aaron did with precision, but also with hitlahavut, with passion. We turn now to L'cha Dodi.